Simply because I've noticed on watching some of the VODs that I'm very, very quiet. So if I'm quiet, you must point out that it's not quite loud enough. Because I was turning up everything, basically, to make it work. Anyway, yes, hello and welcome to CodeZone. It is a Tuesday after all, and this is our first CodeZone after doing one on a Friday as well. So if you were only here last Tuesday, you missed out on Friday's CodeZone. It's alright, we didn't actually do very much as usual. Didn't miss very much. And who have we got here? We've got Magetsu, we've got Anwan, we've got Saucy Blimey's here, hello. And name I can't pronounce is here too. Good. Right, so what we're going to be doing, because we're up to, if you're into sort of the mysterious powers of the decimal system, we are up to episode 13. Is that a good or a bad thing? Let me know in the chat. Hey, Dragon Eye, good to see you here. Right, I did, however, on Saturday, do a little tiny bit of tidying up of some of the code. Not very much, so it's all very similar. But I'll just quickly walk through what we did change. The first thing is I changed the module class slightly. So the module class now takes in a resource ID, which is basically going to be an index into a pool of graphics that we're going to have sort of preloaded into the game. The get cell function we'll have a look at in a minute. We now also have this get data function. So instead of... One of the things I wanted to do is just to be able to access the array directly, and I'll show you why in a minute. Get module size is just returning these constants. I've gone from 4x4 to 5x5 because I made an elementary schoolboy error. You can't have a middle on a 4x4, so 5x5 is much better for having something in the middle. And this get graphics ID just returns the resource ID that's specified. And we'll just have a quick look at some of the code here because it really is simple. So the rotation code does a quick check and just returns the point in the array. The get data literally returns the array itself. And I'm using a standard array in this case. And I'm just defaulting the array to all 0. So this is really just a fancy way of accessing this array structure in 2 dimensions, passing in a rotation index. And the reason I changed this, and maybe we'll start a bit of a debate going on. Let's have a quick catch up here. Apostolisk, hello. Alex, hello. Hello, I remember JavidX9 from YouTube. Cool that you're on Twitch. You have some great advice for programmers on your channel. Well, we'll see how great it is on the Twitch stream, but thank you very much. Shivens93 there. I've got a bit of a cough. It's flared up a bit tonight, so I do apologise for that. And Megs is here as well. Good. Megaref. Go Gruffler is here. And if Gruffler, we've been posting more and more modules, so if you're on the Discord, do have a look in the OLC Code Zone at some of Gruffler's excellent artwork. It's quite unique. I don't know if it's the style we're going to be using, but for now, for placeholder art, it is absolutely superb, and it's good stuff. I'm sure if you ask him nicely, he may release it under a particular license, which is favourable to your projects. Alex with the important questions there. I'll move on and ignore that one. So, why did I make this change? And fundamentally, it was because I wanted to define the modules in a slightly more sensible way. If you recall, we decided that each of the cells in a module on the space station was going to exist of a binary word to let us know whether it's got a north, south, east and west exit, and as well as does it exist. And I was thinking, oh, should we do this all properly? And nowadays, if we go down the proper C++ route, what we would do is define all of these as constants in some sort of enumeration or a namespace, and then we would go and then blend them all together with OR statements. Oh, you can't do that if you're using an enum class, so we'd find some glorious template hack to make it all. And I thought, you know what, sod all that. Instead, what we'll do is just hard code magic numbers directly into the code, and it's better this way. And that's not just sort of an old man Javid sort of arguing this point. It is actually better because it's more visible what's going on because I can line everything up. So if I did have all of these broken out into some sort of constants that we kind of smudge together, we would never be able to actually see the shape, the morphology of what's lying beneath. And this is the 5x5 grid that represents the module. And at the moment, we know that from our little map, and we'll have to learn some of these things, that a bit in the 1 position would represent a northern exit, 2nd position eastern, 3rd position would be southern, 4th position would be western, and 5th position the cell exists. So just simply changing it this way, I can now go to the right file. I can now set the space station to a particular shape. So here it's a bit like a crucifix shape centered in the middle. And this is a much nicer way than what we did last time, which was individually setting the cells and the indices. It also means I can now immediately play with where the doors are simply by setting the right bits. And we shouldn't forget that programmers can read and understand words like this with 1s and 0s in. It's fairly fundamental to what we do. So if you're one of these people that's, going, oh, well, Clang doesn't like it, Javid, it doesn't compile on Clang without warnings, then, this is probably not for you. So I'm quite happy using sort of magic numbers in this context because visually it's better. It looks a bit better. Catch up with the chats after all that. Hang on, slip of tea as well. Speedy's here. Hi, Speedy. Zenithy has posted something I can't pronounce. Danicron, you weren't first. No, Magetsub was first this time. 13 digits, hello. Sky2042. Inzo, hello. Yes, I have to sort of create this unordered map linking all of these names to things. Well, I've found that you can't blame Clang because it's doing the right thing. You shouldn't have magic numbers. You should have things sort of defined, but it doesn't always necessarily get it right. It's got to, in 9 times out of 10, it's right to complain. But in this sort of instance, I like the fact that we can lay it out in a table and it's consistent, and I'm going to stick with that as a method for working with this. So I created a standard vector of these things, which are the templates. So these are not the actual modules. These are sort of what the module will look like when we start adding it to the satellite structure. And we're jumping straight in here. I'm not sort of introducing everything again. I created another vector which contains the graphics. So at the moment, it's a bit of a hack. I'm just loading in a particular graphic. In this case, it's the same one produced by Gruffler, and I know that the ID of that one is 0. It's the first one I've loaded. We will probably most likely come up with a cleverer, is that the right word? Cleverer way of doing that in the future, I think. But for now, I'm just making this association via ID. And it's because I'm sort of biasing towards trying to keep all of my structures as simple as possible. I don't want them to have more complicated data than what would be considered trivial, I think. Yeah, Danicon, try harder. Mr. Omega, well, welcome. Why the double parenthesis or whatever they call it in the initializer? It's just one of those little quirks with standard array. I'm sure there'll be some C++ pedant in the chat that will be able to tell us precisely why, but it's just one of those things. It's just how standard array works. That's me copying out. Actually, honestly, I don't know, and I just don't care either. I just know that if we're doing it standard array, you've got to double them up, but it's probably there for a reason. Slicer, you've got adverts. Oh, excuse me. Adverts tonight. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, well, I don't choose to run adverts, so I can't turn those off. So, right, we have the spaceship, and then I realised we could do something else. And it was, if you recall last time, we had two distinct modes. We had a mode which represents the whole space thing being drawn, and then we sort of went into this special mode to draw the satellite editor. And, that was okay for the live stream at the time to try and do that, but ultimately I really want the experience to be quite fluid. And on the whole, it got me thinking about sort of modalities of operation. How does the user actually interact with our game? And that was a difficult question to answer because we don't really have a game as such yet. We've just got this sort of disparate collection of ideas, and we're fumbling around trying to glue them together as best we can. And I think slowly a game is starting to come together. But to move from one modality to the next, so let's say, for example, you're exploring space, that's a modality, and then we want to position a cursor in space, well, that's a second modality. Then we want to edit a satellite, so that's a third modality. So there's all of these different sort of ways of interacting with the game. And these are clearly sort of candidates for being implemented in some sort of state machine, which is probably what we'll get round to a little bit later on. And it made me think that, well, if I really want sort of fluidity in the game, I don't want it to go sort of blunk, 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 like from one modality to the next. I actually want it to smoothly change from one to the other. So we need to consider that as part of our state machine, that we exist in these states which allow user interactions, but the transitions between states are also important too, and may even be represented as states in their own right. So that's something we'll start debating later on, no doubt. If you subscribe to the channel, you shouldn't get any adverts. Oh, I didn't know that. They are transcoding this time. Okay. I see, these are all things. I just click the button. I didn't know that. I didn't know that subscription status changes these things. Code Poison there. Hello. Blask, 1967. Good evening. It's a little bit of COVID that I've got there. No, I am double vaccinated against COVID. I'm perfectly fine. Oh, I don't do any sort of shout-outs like that sort of thing. Right. So, let's run this. And why was I telling you about the modality thing? That's an important question, because it occurred to me that I wanted to try something I hadn't done before. So if you remember, in the satellite editing modality, we had a tile transformed view. Well, there's no reason why we can't have a tile transform view and a regular transform view running at the same time. Absolutely no reason at all. We can simply, on our this is our satellite update mode, and here is our space mode. So in space mode, we get the mouse stuff and we send it to the transformed view for the background space rendering. And I've decided just to hack in at the end of this function. Well, let's just call the satellite one as well. There we are, on update satellite mode. So the same mouse events then get passed into this secondary tile transform view. And the end result, I think, is quite pleasing. So let's take a look. I'm going to have to build here. So here we've got our zoomed in tile transformed view, and we can see that that was running the simulation going on in the background of the solar system. And if I choose to pan and zoom, I'm now panning and zooming the satellite view, but I'm also panning and zooming the whole universe. I can have both at the same time. And I think that's a far more fluid way to start editing things. Why go from one screen to the next when we can do it all in situ? So that's something I want to try and exploit a little bit more when we start implementing these sort of game states and things. Now, I'll tell some truth here. I have hacked in a little function into the Pixel game engine to allow me to do this. And that is, these lines are now drawn as decals. And that's just to put them on top of all of the sprite information and the other decals that get drawn in the background. That's quite an important thing, because there's a little bit of a performance penalty to using lines like this. And I think when we get around to polishing all of this, I won't actually include a grid. I will instead have something a little bit more flashy, I think, to show that bits of the ship can connect to each other. Let's catch up with some of the chats. It seems everybody is too poor. Well, that's a shame. Don't worry about it. I would rather everybody just think about their own needs before going online and paying any creators for their content, to be honest, including myself. The Chazeg, hello, always late as usual. JavidX9, I wanted to tell you, even though you're coding in C++, you have found the videos very educational. I've been recommending them to people where I can. Well, thank you very much, the Bugger 2000. I'm a Delphi developer. Wow. Well, yes, good. I used to like Delphi. I mean, my background, when I was learning to sort of program in slightly more complicated languages, I was learning Turbo Pascal. And so Delphi was sort of the next way to go with that. I remember using, it was the Ball and Delphi, probably 3.0 or something like that. It was very easy to put a graphical user interface together, but then you just found yourself was writing in Delphi. Delphi's alright. I think FL Studio, I think part of it's written in Delphi. Yeah, if you dig around on their website, I think we discovered that somewhere. No, nothing wrong with Delphi at all. I just don't. Is it still maintained? Is somebody still updating it and making Delphi tools? I don't know. Turbo Pascal was awesome, and was there we go. Started at 89 with Turbo Pascal 5.5, full-time Delphi for 32 years. Well, what software is written in Delphi that's requiring a Delphi programmer? I mean, it does pop up. We do see quite a few people on the server, and I see in the YouTube comments people saying, oh, no, I do Delphi. And so it does exist. Stock market analysis, that's probably why I don't understand the stock market, so... Poly Pascal. I don't think I've ever heard of Poly Pascal. Database clients. Remember, does anybody here programming Fox Pro? Or has everybody blanked that from their memories? Oh, dear me. Right, so what I wanted to try tonight was to start establishing some sort of structure for the satellite itself. See, there we go. 2000 remembers it. Fox Pro, yes, exactly. Twister, hello. Right, so I want to program the satellites. Now, we were thinking of using some sort of creative tree structure for doing this, and I kind of don't feel that doing that live on stream is very interesting. So what I wanted to do instead for my satellite was we're going to create a container that stores all of the modules that we click into it, and that's where we'll start. Because one of the things that we'll probably start needing to think about now is that our module that we're currently using, if I just pull this back on the screen, even though these are very pretty and provided by Gruffler, they're not sort of representative of the type of module that we're going to be using here. So if we want... Oh, by the way, we can rotate those. Did I forget to mention that? So the idea is that rather than them all being distinct cells like this, the modules themselves will be larger shapes and sort of Tetris pieces kind of things, and we'll be able to place doors on them. There is a specification on the OLC Discord about how to do the artwork if you're interested in sort of contributing in that way. But there's a problem, and I need people that know Blender. So all of the Blender experts out there, please. I need a solution, right? Ultimately, my intention is to render this space station parts with normal maps. I'm going to use my new pixel shader PegX to sort of do dynamic real-time lighting for the space station. But I don't know how to use Blender, but I do need a set of imagery creating with normal maps. Now, I presume there's only Blender can output normal maps that are sensible. So, for example, here, this typifies why we can't do what we're doing. I've created these doorways and I've put some shadowing on them and things, but of course if I rotate this or it has a different position on the sun, then the shadow needs to change. So we need to have this sort of pseudo 3D effect, but ultimately that's got to come from being rendered with a real-time light source. So if anybody knows anything about creating normal maps based on 3D geometry, that's probably the direction we need to go down to make the graphics for this. And I am not that experienced with Blender. Let's just sorry, I have to quick glance at the chat. It's been going pretty quick tonight, the chat. Strictly programming PowerPoint. Oh dear. First time watching you live. Oh, thank you very much, Vuku Merg. And welcome. Well, I know Magetsa can sort out some of the Blender stuff too, but I don't like to burden Magetsa with all these sort of things. I know he's a busy chap, so I was just going to open it out a little bit. Yeah, that's the kind of thing. I mean, even a height map would do, because I could create the normal map quite easily myself in the Pixel game engine as I'm loading the imagery. But we just need to start coordinating these things a little bit. And 13 digits is only good at modelling stuff in Blender. Right, so what I think we'll do is let's start slapping these into some greater structure that represents the satellite. And this is where we're starting off, because I don't have a plan from now on, so it's making this up as we go along a little bit. As you can see here, the space station, not the satellite, because I keep misspelling satellite, so I'm calling them space stations, doesn't consist of anything at all. So we need to put an end to that. Let's start populating some of this out. So we'll just give it a constructor to begin with. Don't know what it's going to do. Excuse me. And I think, yeah, we're just going to not do anything too advanced. It's just going to be a vector that stores module implementations. And I think, yeah, we'll probably try and add a lot of the intelligence to this space station class, because one of the tricky things is, are the space stations going to rotate and things, and how does that affect selection and stuff like that? But for now, I'm going to leave this public because I want to experiment with a few ideas before we start trying to make the class into some sort of API. Can I make 3D stuff in SolidWorks? Well, at my work, we use Autodesk Inventor quite a bit. And we prefer it, I believe. I'm told. Let's bang that in there. So we've got a constructor that does nothing. My modules is public for now because that's just I want to work with it. So I'll need to create an instance of space station somewhere in my test environment. So this is, even though this eventually will become the game, it's still full of lots of old bits of test code and stuff that we're not getting rid of. C space station, isn't it? We'll call that station whilst we're playing with this to try and make it work. Now we're not doing anything on the left button being clicked. Where is that? So this is in satellite editing mode. We've got our rotate button being sorted out, but we're not doing anything with left button. So let's hack something in for that. So if get mouse 0 dot B pressed, we want to sort of insert the current module and its rotation. Oh, hang on. Nepal MPig subscribed. Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Even with all my coughing today. You'll have to post some links on the Discord server, I think. The Twitch won't allow us to do that. What kind of stuff do I work on at work? We build robotics for various heavy industries, oil and gas, aerospace, large-scale logistics platforms, that sort of thing. Yeah, if you're going to post any stuff, you'll have to do that on the Discord server. Right, Herbal Dance, hello. Right, so what am I going to do here? So I've got my station, and I know I've got a variable in here called modules at the moment. All I'm going to try and do is push back the current module, but I also need to push back its rotation, don't I? That's interesting. So how do I actually want to store the module, or just the ID to the module? I'm going to just store the ID to the module, I think, which means we need to restructure this space station a little bit. That instead of it being modules, I'm going to store here a pair instead. And it's just going to be a pair of integers. And what I'm going to store in this pair is the first one is going to represent the module ID, and the second is going to represent its rotation. But I also need a bit more information, don't I? Because I don't know where I'm storing these things. So do I actually want to create a copy? So that's my module template. But then I actually need to implement a thing that represents what the module is. Okay, right, I think we need to be a little bit more sophisticated here. An installed module. Okay, so that's going to consist of its location, its rotation, and the module itself. Yeah, okay. We might call this one a module template, and eventually this one just becomes the module. We'll play about with the wording later. Thank you, Alex, for posting the links there. Sorry. Yeah, we don't have a bot that does anything. Our bot is basically Dragoneye or Alex. Yeah, no, when you're out of soda, I'm out of tea, and I'm out of Vimto as well, and I'm sort of halfway through a stream, so that's no good, is it? So now we've got something that can represent a link between our module. Now you might think, why are we not just storing the objects themselves? Well, because later on I'm thinking we're going to do things a bit differently. So that's why I'm creating sort of objects in pools, and I'm storing IDs to them instead. Now, also because I don't know yet where we're going to put in the processing functionality of the module. Is it going to be somewhere part of this class? Possibly. Is it likely it's going to be something defined externally in maybe a Lua file, something? I think that's a more likely scenario, in which case we do need to think about that, but a little bit later on. For now, I just want to attach modules to the satellite in some sensible way. So our V modules now contains an interesting little structure. I've even forgotten what we call it. S module installed. Or installed module, there we go. And we want to set some properties. So its position is going to be, where do we have our position? Where are we getting our position from? There we go, mouse. So let's pull you up here. There we go. And we're going to set your position to be the mouse. We're going to set the rotation to be whatever our current rotation is. Module rotate. And we're going to set the ID to be whatever our current selected module is. Now, I just need to find that one. Module template, that was that one. And we're going to push that whole structure into this vector of module links. Right, so now we've got a way of sort of inserting that information into the space station. I think now we need to come up with a way of drawing the space station a little bit more cleverly than we did before. Because previously we just iterated through the entire module, which we're going to do the same thing. I just need to now wrap this with something that iterates through this vector instead. Now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Apologies if you've been struggling to see the code, just so I could look at some of the longer lines. Right, so that's our cell. It's our module template. This is drawing our module template, but we actually do want to draw the satellite itself, don't we? So, what's the easiest way to do this? Yes, is to auto through them. Auto. Right, so this is a n module instance. Station, wasn't it? That was what we called it. MV modules. So I'm going to draw the existing space station before I draw what is effectively the cursor. And just to make a distinction between the two, I'm going to set the cursor to be tinted as white. Now we may change the tinting based on validity later, so it's a good idea to do it this way. But I'm going to set the transparency to about half, I think. So the cursor will sort of drift around on top of the space station that we're building up. Now, for every module in the space station, we need to draw its position relative to where it is. So we're basically going to be cutting and pasting a little bit of this code. And we're going to take now from our templates, we can actually take that straight from our module instance .module ID. We know what the rotation is because that's also now our module instance dot rotation. And the graphics is, well, we've already got we're taking this code here, we're actually sort of caching the module itself, the actual description of the module. If that gets a bit annoying, I'll turn down the desktop noise. For some reason, I don't know why it happens, but YouTube tends to batch subscriptions like that. Oh, let me just catch up with some of the chats because someone's gone. Yeah, tea break. Well, that's the problem. I'm out of tea. Has written 5 lines. Well, yeah, that's how it works on the CodeZone. Sorry about that. Soon he'll have a kid to bring him tea. It might be a little bit while. Fruit tea's not tea. I'm surprised, Nanoic, that your sleepy tea isn't something like, was it St. John's wort or something like that? Current project is 3,000 lines and I have to refactor it all. It's scary. 3,000, huh? Well, you got to start somewhere. I think my my PhD thesis code ended up being almost 75,000 lines of code. Somewhere around that mark, anyway. It was a lot. Rootmer. It's okay, you don't have to code. And thank you for joining us. You have a little dinosaur thing. GlitchCon 2020. Don't know what that means. Right, where are we up to? What am I doing? I've completely lost track. Get distracted by the chats and thinking about don't cough, don't cough, don't cough. So that should draw, but that's not going to draw in the right place because when we click, am I doing anything clever with the clicking? Where am I putting this offset? So I know that I've got the center of the module isn't actually where the mouse cursor is. So maybe that's the first thing that we need to sort out. That in reality, when we install this module, we're always going to install it +2. So its position is vmouse -2. And we need to do the same when we're drawing the cursor, but not when we're drawing the module. Oh, well, it looks like I'm already doing something like drawing the decal -2. That's for the cursor, but yes, okay, so we don't want to do it for that. Right. Okay. Click and hope. It's click and hope time. My software was I wrote a compiler and virtual machine environment for experimental prototype vision chips, which are chips which do... We designed silicon, so it was really the tool chain to write compilable code for our own processors. Right, okay, so there's our decal cursor, and that's nice and translucent. Oh, hang on, I'm just going to restart that because there's a little bug, and I'll demonstrate that in a minute. I need to press tab before we start moving these things around. So there we've got our sort of cruciform shape, and it's blurred out a little bit, slightly more translucent because it's the cursor. So if I click, okay, so that's clicked and put it. Ooh, hang on. Not what I expected to happen. So let's click again. That one has put some. Oh right, so it's all going wrong here. Right, let's explore that then. We're drawing the satellite, but the satellite has no modules to begin with. When we're drawing it, because we don't want it to have the mouse there, do we? No, that's nonsense. That won't help things at all. Try again. So let's click. Okay, it's put it up there. Now that's why is that? That's because it's relative to something, I don't know. I'll click over there. Right, everything's going up into the top corner, so we're losing the mouse position from where we're inserting it. Why is that? Because I'm not offsetting by. Even though we store this position, I'm not using it, am I? Yes, so it's this V cell plus get cell from the cell's location, but draw it into the modules. In this case, it's end module instance dot vparse. There we go. Human 3562, yes, you did catch a stream. Congratulations. It didn't take too long to compile 75,000. Of course, you don't sort of compile it all at once. When you get to a project that large, if you're not using static libraries or dynamic libraries sensibly, then you're not doing it right. Right, something just happened. What have we got? K0M15CH, or Komishk, I'm guessing. Subscription, thank you very much. Yes, do appreciate that. You've made a normal map in Blender as a test. Where do I send it to? Irish Brews, we have on the Discord server, I hope you remember, because it's really sort of the only way to send things to me, is we have a special chat on the Discord server called the OLC CodeZone. People are dropping off their art in there. And yep, the mods are straight on it with, well, Alex's looks like a fairly suspicious link, so I'm not entirely sure you want to click on that one. But Dragon Eyes looks legitimate. Looks like you've got more letters than you actually need there, Alex. Is that right? Right, let's try this again. So we've added now, I'm pointing at the screen and you guys can't see me pointing at the screen, can you? It's all good, it's all falling apart. It's what happens when you get older. Dragon Eye will tell you that. Now when we click, there we go. So we've put it there. We've accidentally drawn it sort of the wrong shade, but now we can put in modules. And it retains the rotation. So let's sort out that shading issue. In our West, we're drawing it here. So we now no longer want to draw them with a bias towards being translucent. So I'm just going to set the alpha component to 1 there. Try that again. Click, click. There we go. That's a bit better. Now, what is a valid location for putting a module? Well, it's somewhere where there isn't already a thing. And this is where it's going to get a little bit interesting, I think, because the only way I can really check that is to check each cell that exists of the module that we're placing with the background map. But there's some sort of precursory filters we can sort of do to make this a little bit quicker. Because I know that for the first click, I know that all of my modules are 5 by 5. I can do a simple cursory check to make sure, well, if any module exists within that 5 by 5 radius, then that's a candidate for being considered for collision. So anything else that's outside that, then we don't care. That'll be the first pass at it. I'm not too bothered about making things really efficient here, because these are not going to be become critical components of the game loop in any way. It's an editing tool fundamentally. But along with the overlapping modules, which we don't want, because at the moment I can make them overlap, so I can click there and they overlap, and I don't want that feature. But we do care about making sure things like doors line up. Now, we don't yet have doors as graphics and things, even though I've got some placeholder art I can throw in. I've not yet sort of got to the point where we're rendering them. Well, that's it, yes, I can check only the cells that will be changed, and that's what I will do. So I will use the current template as a guide for what's there. But you've got to remember, I don't have in the background a 2D map of cells that belong to module objects. What I have is a vector of these modules themselves. So I will need to sort of iterate through all of those modules to find out, are they within the collision area? Or another way of doing this is when we're in edit mode, we do create a 2D map in the background and just store a link in that map location to a particular cell, a particular module for that cell. Now, there's multiple ways to think about doing this. I guess we have to pick one. The easiest option is to just come up with some arbitrary map. The only reason I don't like that is because I don't really want the space station to be bound by a grid. So fundamentally, I don't want to just create a larger and larger array for more and more complicated space stations. I mean, we've got to be realistic as well. It's never going to be a huge array, because even if it was 4 times that size, it's still not large, but the space station contained within will be phenomenally complicated. But the downside is, at the moment, we don't know how big or small the game's going to be. These are decisions we haven't made yet. There's an answer there. Just make a quad tree. Everybody says just make quad trees. Do everything with quad trees. Quad trees are good, but they're not sort of this universal solution for all problems. Potentially in sort of this sort of problem, quad tree isn't even... It would do no better than just rejecting things outright straight away. Right? And also, is a quad tree necessary for such a small number of modules? So there's trade-offs and things that you need to consider. The Bugger 2000. There we go. These are your DMX Project Delphi you mentioned on Twitch today. Cool. I will click on that once I'm not live streaming, just in case it's incredibly inappropriate. I'm sure it's not, but I'm not going to take that risk. Irish Bruce. Yes, just a second. Hang on. I can make it so that you can post images in this channel. There we go. I'll also do that for you as well. Excellent. Right, so I think now what we'll do is just check for a given live cell when we place it, is it overlapping something that already exists in that location? And we'll just have to brute force this and check against all the modules. And we'll optimize. I want to do the optimizations and things off stream because they're not the most exciting thing to watch. What people like, I think, is seeing sort of the project develop. And so that's really what I'm pushing. So here when we're inserting the module, this is where we want to do a quick check to make sure that things are sensible. So how are we going to do this? Well, I think we're going to need similar looking code to what we've already got. So let's pinch some of that. And I think I'll also off stream, I'll encapsulate a lot of this functionality into a more set of reusable functions, as it were, just to make things a little bit more simple. Oh, can't call it M this time around though, can I? Okay, we can't call it M, so what are we going to call this? Is installed module, so that's going to be IM. So we're going to iterate through each one of those cells. The cell exists in the mouse location. Does it? Yes, it does. So that's going to be the same. It's the same template. Everything, all of that's the same. It's the same rotation. That's the location we are drawing it. But we're not checking against... yes, we are checking against the mouse, aren't we? IMVPOS is the same as that. Okay. So we're going to go from there, but we're not drawing the decal anyway, so that's not what we want. But what we do want is this position. Just a second, I can hear a strange noise, won't be a moment. I think somebody's running a tap. Right, so yes, we want to draw the... we don't want to draw the cells, we want to check the cells, that's what we're doing. So if the cell is greater than or equal to 16, then it exists. So now we want to go through all of the objects that are already part of the station structure. So oddly, we kind of want the other set of code now. This one. To iterate through all of the space station modules that are already part of this station. So we'll go through them all, and for each one of those we're going to have to create some new variables again, aren't we? We're going to... I want to make sure we're not overlapping too many things here. We're going to get the cell, we'll call this one a module that already exists. ME, 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 and that's going to get the cell at that location. If that cell equals 16, and if this cell is equal to 16, then we shouldn't be able to place anything there, right? So that means something exists. So we've got an overlap of some description. And if we've got an overlap at all, we should probably set a flag to let us know that we're overlapping. We'll call that B valid position. By default, we'll set that to... well, by default, we'll set that to true, actually, because I think what these are going to do is determine whether we can't set something. So I'll set that to false. What is that, right? What does that mean? The valid position. There we go. Valid position equals false. If you were a VTuber, what animal would your avatar be? Nanoic, you know me better than that. I have no idea what you're asking. Just use brute force. At the moment, that's exactly what we're doing. We're going to be using brute force. Ah, Christoph, it was you that was asking, was it? Yes, okay, well, yeah, you've learnt something. I would do a binary map of every module and them with checked ones, but I guess that's just me. Yeah, possibly. That would be a way to do it. The downside is, if we ever chose to change the size of the modules, it's not long before you end up going beyond 64 bits, of course. So if you've got an 8x8 module, which would be quite large, admittedly, and I know that that's not within the scope of what we've got here. You could and the whole thing together. Could you, though? No, not easily. No, you couldn't. Yes, you could represent the individual module as a binary word, but how do you represent the thing in the background? And then how do you do the 2D partitioning of that word to make sense, given the strides of the array in the background? It's not just comparing whether a module exists exactly in the same location as another module. The modules themselves have offsets within this greater space. So I think that's actually a slightly more complicated problem to solve using binary words there. Is this JS? Well, there's nothing wrong with having stuff nested, is it? I know that all of these numbers are small, so it's fine. It's only the users that'll suffer. Who cares about users? Right, so that's going to set that to false. Now, what can we do? Well, one of the things we can do is actually set this the colour of our cursor to sort of indicate whether we can put something there or not. So, if this is set to be valid position, everybody's going to love this, aren't they? Right, yeah, whack a great big turnery thing in there. So, if it's valid, we'll tint it. No, we'll keep it sort of white and translucent. But if it's not valid, then we'll shade it slightly red. Is there a way to get a straight up 0 times 1 if a value is not equal to 0 without an if? Yeah, you can double bang. Sounds a bit rude, that, doesn't it? Right, so is this all just going to lock up and be a horrible mess, or, you know, what have we missed? Let's have a look. So, click. Well, it's not going red, although it possibly is a bit difficult to say. It doesn't look like it's going red in that location. Oh, that's because we've not clicked, have we? So that's part of the problem. We kind of want it to do the checking all the time, not on a mouse click. Ugh, okay. So we can take this bit here, because we're going to do this all the time anyway, and we can just simply lock that bit. If mouse is pressed and B valid position is equal to true, then we'll apply the module to the space station. We just now need to sort out this mess. Now, this could have all sorts of variable names in it that I'm unsure about, so I'm just going to stick those in a scope of its own. That's not lining up, Visual Studio. What's going on? Sort yourself out. Get up there. Come on. There we go. Oh, here we go. Sagging it. I'm undeclared. Oh, yes, okay. So our module instance, that can come out. So that's going to be created, but that's okay. That's trivial. Don't care about that. We only use it if we need it. Okay, that's suspicious. It worked a bit too soon there. Let's have a look now. So that's a valid position. It's not gone red. So if I click, look at that now. It's always red. But at least when it's red, it's not letting me click. So why is it going always red? So something's always returning true. I may need to get the old debugger out here. Valid position is true. The only thing that sets it to false is if we've got some overlap in our cells. So if that particular cell was greater than or 60, if it existed, and therefore if one of these cells... we've not actually checked, are they in corresponding locations? We've just simply checked they have cells. So, right, okay, that's a bit fiddlier. We now need to sort of reverse engineer where this cell is in space. So if this cell is greater than 16, its location in space is the V cell plus its current offset, isn't it? So it's here. Yes, so this is the current template. So we want to grab the position information from here. I'm vpos. So if that cell exists, might need to draw this out. Are you caching the collision detection? There is no collision detection. I'm always curious, what English are you speaking? Easy and clear to understand. It's just English. It's just English. My accent would typically be a little bit of northern UK. I live not so far from Liverpool, although I spent some time in Manchester, and I used to teach a lot of international students. And over the years, something like 12 years, I lost my sort of more Liverpudlian accent and developed this sort of more neutral one, because it was easier to communicate with people that weren't native English speakers. And, you know, I'm all the better for it. I have no regrets about that. So I'm completely lost track. It's getting confusing. I'm getting confused. Right, so we've got to pick a location. Now, is the simplest way to do this is actually to sort of create the location in space, isn't it? Rather than trying to do some clever offsetting. So I think that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm just going to get the cell's location in full-on space, which we've already kind of done, because we're doing that when we're drawing these cells, not the cursor, we're just drawing the regular cell, which is there. So it's vCell plus the instance's position at that one time. So cursor in space cell is going to be our module. Well, it's our IM vpos plus vcell. Then we want to do something similar for here. So if we get cell is greater than or equal to 16. See, what I was thinking, that the smart way would be to somehow take this location and reverse engineer it back into checking for the collisions in the get cell function. But like I said, keeping things really simple. So this one is module in space, because that one already exists. So this module in space cell simply exists with, I have to be careful here, that's module, template module instance. This one is n module instance, there we go, dot vpos plus the vcell. That's already got the -2 offset. So b valid position is if both of these are the same and both the cells are greater than or equal to 16, then we set this to false. Is that right? So if v module module in space cell is equal to v cursor in space cell, then we can set that to false. Right, this is never going to work. If this works, it'll be an absolute miracle. If it doesn't, well, it's the end of the stream anyway. So, all good from my point of view. Very selfish point of view, I admit. Right, so we've got our thing. I can click, and as you can see, as the cursor goes over the existing shapes, it goes red. Ta-da, look at that. That was an amazing, astonishing display of courageous nested loop logic there. And it's kind of working. I think there's probably some situations where it doesn't work very well. So actually, if it is red, it should still allow me to... Does it? No, okay. It doesn't actually allow me to place the objects if it's not valid. So I can only place them in correct locations. Let's just try that with a bit of a rotation. So that's good. So that's working for rotation as well. Yes, like that. That's good. Okay. So that means now we can't have sort of overlapping objects. So the next phase of this will be to make sure that the doors you can only connect things where there are doors or linkage points to connect. And that's a little bit more complicated, but we've got this very basic part out the way. And I think I'll go and refactor some of that and tidy that up a little bit off stream, I think. Slightly northern. It's okay, Christopher. Nobody really understands what I'm doing, and even I don't really understand what I'm doing just yet. It is definitionless at the moment. But you see, that's the nice point. So in theory, because we've not limited ourselves to a grid, let me restart that so we know where things are relative. The bug I've got is that at the moment, when you pan with the middle mouse button, because we're currently locked onto the center of the planet, the camera isn't in the same location. So there's that's something we need to work on with the the transform view. So I'm just going to press tab. Now that puts us into free camera modes, which allows me to pan and everything remains consistent. The collisions that we were talking about, Christopher, is not really collisions in this case. It's just we just don't want things to overlap sort of once. So it's not sort of something that we're always checking for. But what this should have allowed me to do is I can come all the way over here and I can click. Right? And we're still in tile space. And I've got this huge array. I mean, it's an array the size of the solar system. But it's costing us absolutely nothing to check if things can be validly put in that position. And that's one of the advantages of not sort of deteriorating to a gigantic 2D grid to solve this problem. So yes, I'm only drawing the first 20 by 20 cells here, but it doesn't have to be. Right? We could go nuts. Right? So let's like stupid size. We go beyond the fringe of the universe there, and it still works. Now, of course, it will start to slow down as we start adding loads and loads and loads of things to the system, the solar system, that is. But that's okay. I'm happy with that. Right, catch up with some of the chats. Streaming to I see only YouTube before. Yeah, if you've watched my latest YouTube video, you'll see that things are changing. So I'm doing a bit more live streaming than videos, just for, well, probably the rest of this year, but we'll see. First try, yeah. I surprised myself with that one. Now we can play Space Tetris. So it's like Tetris with space stations. At the moment, yes, that's probably the best way to do it. Uploaded a normal map just to test if it's something specific. I can do it with no problem. Okay, well that's interesting to know because what I'll do then is I'll try that normal. Have you got the texture that can go with that? Because it's I guess I can use any old texture. I'm just looking at it in the CodeZone now. Diego Twister here in Twitchland. Yes, that's the kind of thing I'm looking for, but I do need to make sure that we can render them from orthographic perspectives instead, because obviously it's a 2D game fundamentally. We'll need to play with how that renders. So I think Irish Brews there has the right idea with sort of the door shape that I'm thinking about doing. There is some specification. Perhaps we'll chat about that after the stream. Aren't they going to be moving? Yes, they are going to be moving. Now, that's one of the things we've not really got around to talking about today, was these modalities that I wanted to mention. This is an editing modality for the space station, but in reality, the space station will be something that orbits something else. And they'll be following these paths around the solar system. But you don't really want to be doing this whilst you're trying to edit the space station, just constantly trying to drag. No good to anybody. What you'd prefer instead is to lock on to the object that you're interested in, sort of following about. So maybe it's this one, and instead then you can place the space station relative to those objects. It's also probably easier for the player to edit the space stations without those rotating. So here now the whole space station would have rotated somewhat, but when we're editing it, because when you play these games, you sort of mentally build a map up of where the things are as you're placing the modules and the resources, and you need that to remain consistent. It's no good if halfway through the game your entire village had turned 30 degrees round. You'd be confused as to where things were. Where did you leave them, right, if everything's moving around all the time? So I think whenever we go to edit a satellite or a space station, it will go back into this sort of default view. But then when we leave that modality, I want the camera to sort of spin round and go back to normal. So it's all nice and fluid for the player. But it's a really good point that, no, the space stations are going to be moving around the universe. Yes, and the space stations can spin. Can you type blind? No. What will be the objective of this game? It's a great question. And with that, I'm going to thank you all for watching. That is the end of this stream today, and I appreciate you all stopping by. I think we've made good progress there. I'm quite happy with the space station editor we've made so far. So until then, I'm going to be chatting on the Discord, and I'll see you later. Take care.